let's go to the Department of War again. So not only are they blowing up alleged drug boats, but they are blowing up reportage at the Pentagon. So this story came from the Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and he says, you know what? If you are in the Pentagon physically as a reporter, you have to submit what you're going to write or say on radio and television to me before you do it. And I said, that's nuts. All right. And then there was some pushback. Roll the tape. So I got a couple of letters, and I know on social media, some MAGA people going, that's right, Hegseth, right. Let's make all the press agencies that cover the Pentagon sign a paper that they will not report anything that happens in the Pentagon unless they get permission from Pete Hegseth. Are you kidding me? All right, so everybody pulled out. All the established media, the corporate media pulled out. But there are still organizations that have said, okay, all right, we're gonna play along with this. And one of them surprised me very, very much. So you know that we have the utmost respect for John Solomon's news operation called Just the News. And he's going along with Hegseth. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. I was surprised, John. You're a staunch freedom of the press guy, and nobody pushes you around. Why would you do that?
Well, first off, these rules are not really any different than what have been in place or what's in the law for years. And I think that that's one of the great parts of the disinformation campaign, that these standards weren't in place for the last 40 or 50 years. The current Press Association goes back to the 1940s, and we made public for everybody to see all the censorship restrictions that the Pentagon Press Pool agreed starting in 1942. By the way, they submitted their work back in those days to a Department of Censorship, just so you know. Now, obviously, that was wartime footing, but the Press Association has always been in a position of having to abide by certain national security rules to gain access to the building. And by the way, just recently, we put out all of the forms that the New York Times, the Associated Press, and others used to visit Gitmo for the trials. And they agreed to...
Let me stop you there. There's a difference between national security reporting, because there's a law.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to the Pentagon Papers in Vietnam. There is a law.
There is.
If there's classified information that you or me or anybody else reports, and you violate that classified status, government can prosecute you. That's not the same as submitting a routine report to Pete Hegseth that you can say yes or no and tell you what you can and cannot say. Yeah. It's not the same, John. You know that.
That is not what the final rules say. I had my lawyer go through every single line.
All right. So what's the rule? What does Just the News have to do to stay in the Pentagon and report?
Well, by the way, I actually wasn't in the Pentagon. I decided to go into the Pentagon because there's a void. So we didn't have a reporter there. I didn't operate under the other rules. I've been able to cover the Pentagon effectively on the outside. But when so many people left, I decided to make sure we had a reporter there because, hey, we're blowing up Venezuelan boats every couple of days. We're in armed conflict. We had a major thing. I felt it important to have a reporter there, and the rules under which Pete Hegseth asked us to abide by for that reporter in the Pentagon are not any different than what the Associated Press operated under when I was the assistant bureau chief for AP 20 years ago. You can't solicit classified information. You can't go and tell someone, please leak me a classified document.
Nobody has a problem with that. Classified information is different than reporting.
But that's what these rules say. That's right. That's what these rules say. They say you can't go to certain parts of the building without an escort. That's always been the case.
That's
it might
okay.
have been lax. Yep,
but
that's right.
That's not what the press is objecting to. They're objecting to having to submit stories to the defense secretary, the war secretary, and he signs off on it. No,
find me that passage in the final rules. It's not in the final rules. That is the great story. A lot of the people that reported on this bill reported on an earlier set of rules from September. They never showed the public the final rules. I read the final rules. I've published the final rules. There is nothing that says I must submit my story to Pete Hegseth for approval before I do it. It does say I can't roam the building in certain places. It does say that I can't solicit national security information. The final rules, which were published after the shutdown began, and you can't find them in the New York Times stories that mention them, aren't that. Now, we interviewed and we got, I'm going to tell you how this story evolved. The media is reporting what the early rules from September showed, not what was ultimately issued in October.
So you said it was revised. There was a revision made by Hegseth. Is that right?
Hegseth in concession to the media.
Well, of course.
Yeah, and the rules that ultimately were published, are no different than what we operated under for the last 20
All right,
years.
I got that point, but I wasn't aware that there was a revision by the Secretary of War.
That may be intentional, by the way.
Sure.
Let me tell you why. The media didn't want people to know what the debate. They wanted to keep the old debate up that this was a censorship debate when it wasn't. Let me tell you what this ultimately came down to. And how do I know this? Because I have the internal emails of the Pentagon press poll to the key handlers in Hegseth's office. What were they objecting to at the end? They no longer objected to any of the restrictions. You can look at this document. It's up on Just the News. They did not want to sign a document that had the words, "We understand the document we are signing." That was the final objection raised by the Pentagon Press Association lawyer, David Schultz, in this memo. They didn't object to anything else in the rules after they were revised.
But Fox News and Newsmax, very pro-Hegseth, very pro-Trump, they pulled out too. So there had to be some kind of onerous provision for them to make that move.
I will tell you, I would never have signed the original rules in September. The rules that came out in October, which, by the way, we weren't at the Pentagon. We decided to step into the void because I think it's dangerous not to have a person at the Pentagon at this moment in history. They did not require me to get any prior consent from Pete Hegseth or anyone at the Pentagon.
Homeowners, when is the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is never, then this is for you. Scammers are stealing titles, and your equity is a target. Criminals forge your signature. Just like that, your home title can be transferred out of your name. That's why I partnered up with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Please use my promo code BILL at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report. Plus, you will get a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts of any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code BILL. I didn't know that the rules were revised, and I'm pretty on it, okay?
Yeah.
And so is my staff. We're on it.
Yep.
Why didn't Hegseth come out and say, maybe we went overboard here. Let's bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Why do you think he didn't do that?
Well, it's funny. I think when you look at the exchange of emails between Hegseth and the Press Association, that was the conversation. Hey, we've made these things. We heard what you said. No, we're not going to require you to do this.
But it wasn't to the public. I don't care about the dopey press. Why didn't Hegseth just sit down, have a press conference?
We'll have to ask Pete why. I don't know the answer. I made the decision.
That is a good question. And now that you're there, and
we're going to ask it for you.
Yeah, you're probably the leading news organization there.
Let's hope so.
You are.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Why don't you just make this public and tamp it down?
Right.
Because
I can tell you this: the final rules never got published because the office that publishes them got closed by the shutdown. Now I think that's a lousy excuse for not publishing them, and it's a really lousy excuse that the media used to because they didn't publish them in their own story.
He can type them up.
He can talk anytime he wants. So he owes us. We'll get that explanation.
All right, John. But when you get an answer to that question, let me know. So what are you guys working on now?
I think the big story of the next few days is going to be the next revelations in Arctic Frost, which is an investigation that looks like it was about January 6th and stopping the electors, but really was the second major opposition research project for the Democratic parties that masqueraded as a criminal investigation. We're going to learn in the next few hours, Bill, that over 155 conservatives were targeted in an alleged plot to stop the counting of votes. Now, there can't possibly have been 155 people working together to stop the January 6th count going on. There aren't that many senators even in the Senate chamber. This was launched a year and a half after January 6th occurred. Why do you start a criminal investigation about January 6th a year and a half later? And then why are you widening it to the sort of things we have? So 155 conservatives targeted, 92 groups in addition to those 155, 30 million lines of phone data being gathered, including phone data on 8 sitting senators and a House member. This is Russia collusion too, and what you're doing is the Democrats use the investigative power to build a case against Donald Trump not winning in 2024 and called it a criminal investigation when it wasn't. And I think
and what did Christopher Wray, who's the FBI chief, who had to sign off on this,
and by the way, appointed by Trump. Yeah.
Right. What did he want to accomplish, in your opinion?
It's unclear how well he understood what was going on. It's clear from the FBI agent who opens the case, a guy named Tim Tebow, who is openly anti-Trump. He's the guy that had those anti-Trump messages.
What did he want to accomplish? What did he by tapping these 8 senators and by doing all this nefarious stuff? What was the end game? What did they want?
They wanted to be able to map anybody and everybody that was in support of Donald Trump who could come back and help him in 2024 win re-election again. The reason this doesn't open until the spring and summer of 2024, based on the 2022, excuse me, a year and a half after you think you'd be opening a January 6th investigation, is Trump began looking viable again in the spring and summer of 22. His numbers are coming up. He's on the trail. Nothing has knocked him off his game. And I think at that point they go back to just like Russia collusion.
So what I'm getting from you, and it's a little murky, is that the Justice Department under Biden wanted to show that certain conservatives, both in and out of government, all right, had worked with President Trump to gin up this January 6th riot?
Well, that is what the predicate of the investigation says. But some of the people that I look at don't seem to have any role at all on January 6th.
No, I'm not. Listen, but I just want to know what they were fishing for. What are you fishing for?
I think they came up with a map of everybody that would be in Trump's 2024 MAGA camp and tried to pin them down with legal liabilities. Get a lawyer, go before a grand jury, have to spend money, get your attention off of winning the 2024 election by fighting.
But why would they have to get a lawyer? Because they colluded to foster a riot? Is that what the ultimate goal was?
This investigation is not about the riot. This investigation was purportedly, were they trying to stop, either get fake electors named or stop the counting for a couple days so that more issues
the counting of the election. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let me know what you find out, and
I will,
tell Hegseth I send my best.
I will. We'll get you that answer. I promise.
I don't think he's a fan of mine, but we want to be fair, John. You know that.
Anyone who's a fan of the truth is a fan of yours. I will say.
Okay. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.